Hello everyone. Today we're going to visit the Tuzigoot National Monument near Cottonwood, Arizona, right after this short video. Please subscribe, like, and comment, and I'll see you in a second. Tuzigoot National Monument preserves a 2 to 3 story Pueblo ruin on the summit of a limestone and sandstone ridge just east of Clarkdale, Arizona, 120 feet above the Verde River floodplain. The Tuzigoot site is an elongated complex of stone masonry rooms that were built along the spine of a natural outcrop in the Verde Valley. The central rooms stand higher than the others and they appear to have served public functions. The Pueblo has 110 rooms. The National Park Service currently administers 58 acres with an unauthorized boundary of 834 acres. The Pueblo was built by the Sinagua people between 1125 and 1400 CE. Tuzigoot is the largest and best preserved of the many Sinagua Pueblo ruins in the Verde Valley. Tuzigoot was excavated from 1933 to 1935 by Lewis K. Wood and Edward Spicer of the University of Arizona. In 1935 through 1936, with additional federal funding, the ruins were prepared for public display, and a Pueblo-style museum and visitor center was constructed. President Franklin D. Roosevelt designated Tuzigoot ruins as a U.S. National Monument on July 25, 1939. The bounty at hand. Human presence on this landscape started at least 13,000 years ago. People have been here ever since. The Verde Valley has all the right ingredients: water, diverse plant animal life, important minerals, shelter and building materials, arable land, and natural travel corridors. It is a desirable place to live. Any group could have been self-reliant and sustained by the resources right here, but every group extended their base through trade and travel. The Yavapai traveled seasonally between pinyon juniper woodlands and the Sonoran Desert to collect varied resources, such as pine nuts and saguaro fruit. Life in between. Tuzigoot sits in the central mountain province of Arizona. Transitions occur in this intermediate place between plateau and desert. Plant and animal communities and climatic elements of high and low elevations combine. Mesquite reaches its northern range. 2 species of yucca find their southern limit. Differences in slope, soil, and groundwater make plant life even more complex. Add rare habitats including the river, a marsh, spring, stream, and caves, and you have one of the most biologically diverse areas in the Southwest. On the valley floor, prime farmland formed along a serpentine river that ran slower and deeper than today. In summary, the valley's resources were critical to surviving in what is otherwise a harsh landscape. Salt, a prized substance. Living here, people had a vital resource: salt, the only rock we eat. Globally, salt is associated with fertility, longevity, loyalty, truth, and wisdom. It preserves and prevents decay and therefore protects from harm. Evil spirits detest it. It is a potent substance. People who eat red meat appear to derive from it all the salt they need, but vegetable diets rich in potassium offer little sodium chloride. On every continent, once human beings began cultivating crops, they began looking for salt. A salt mine near Camp Verde was used by all the valley's indigenous groups. Hopi claimed to have collected its blue salt for centuries. Historically, the Yavapai provided the Hopi with safe passage during the pilgrimages to the mine. In many southwestern indigenous cultures today, painting signifies bringing to completion and making sacred. It is done to show devotion to a way of life. Painting must have been an important aspect of life here too. Found at Tuzigoot were 21 paint mortars, paint palettes, and minerals. These rendered red, green, yellow, blue, and white pigments needed for rituals such as painting figurines and prayer sticks, and for face and body painting. Excavators also noted a clay-lined painted basket. Such a creation represents a labor-intensive, complicated technology, possibly only carried out by certain ritual practitioners. The basket maker and painter may not have been the same person, as historically women made baskets and men made painted ritual items. From rubble to reconstruction, an exploration of Tuzigoot Pueblo inspires questions, answering some while provoking others. The story along this trail recounts people both ancient and modern. Along this 2/3 mile loop trail, you will find the remains of a 110-room pueblo, its oldest rooms built over 900 years ago. Many have wondered what it was like to dwell here, what happened in these rooms, who lived here, why did they leave, and how do we know? Before 1933, this hill seemed strewn with rubble rather than rooms. An excavation led by archaeologists Lewis R. Kaywood and Edward H. Spicer revealed some of Tuzigoot's story and rebuilt the pueblo, while giving badly needed jobs to local families in the Great Depression. Their excavations told us about the people who occupied Tuzigoot, but there still is much to learn. People of the Verde. People have long been drawn to settle in the Verde Valley for its plentiful food sources, water, and natural shelters. The earliest people to arrive here left behind fluted spear points that date to 13,000 years ago. About 1,500 years ago, people began to settle more permanently, which marked the beginning of long-term growth of agricultural communities throughout the valley. As people began living together in larger numbers during the 1100s, settlements like Tuzigoot replaced small, dispersed farming sites. By the year 1200, communities extended all along the Verde River and its tributaries. Around 1400, these Puebloan farming groups began leaving the valley for other settlements. Nearly 200 years later, when the first Europeans arrived, they found the valley populated by Yavapai people, living in scattered rancherias, clusters of dwellings that were less permanent than pueblos. An evolving village. From a few rooms on the hilltop to a 110-room pueblo, this dwelling transformed over centuries as increasing numbers of people came together to form a community. The pueblo you see today was not built all at once or with a plan, but instead developed over centuries. As the population increased, people changed the size, layout, and functions of the rooms. A public space would have become important as the village grew larger, for the same reasons as today, to conduct social, economic, political, and ceremonial activities. Unlike pueblos to the north on the Colorado Plateau, few rooms at Tuzigoot were used solely for storage. Almost every room floor had a fire hearth, indicating a living space. The larger rooms at Tuzigoot may have met a need for both living and storage space. Rich in minerals. The mineral deposits hidden in this landscape sustained life in the Verde Valley in the past and today. Just as minerals in the land sustained this prehistoric hilltop village, the copper beneath the earth provided the basis for founding modern towns nearby. Starting in the 1880s, prospectors began mining the valley's abundant copper supply, creating Clarkdale and the billion-dollar town of Jerome, still visible on the mountain slope today. In addition to bringing wealth to the area, the copper mining industry left marks on the land that are still visible now. The landscape before you contains approximately 5 million tons of mining waste, or tailings, spanning over 116 acres. Shifting winds sometimes swirled the tailings into spectacular dust storms. To prevent wind and water erosion and return the land to a more natural appearance, the tailings were capped and revegetated in 2006. Caring for traces of the past. Since excavation exposed them to erosion, floors and wall segments have required ongoing preservation treatments. A building held together with mud mortar requires regular upkeep. After the original residents moved on, the mortar eroded, causing roofs and walls to collapse. Rubble filled the rooms, burying and protecting lower wall sections and room floors, including features like fire hearths and post holes from timber supporting the roofs. Excavation removed this protective fill, subjecting floors and walls to erosion and deterioration. Consequently, rooms needed a number of modern protection measures, which included cementing walls, placing capstones, adding drains to keep water from standing in the rooms, and covering floor features with dirt. Though well-intended, some of the early preservation efforts can be mistaken for original construction, while others can cause damage. Because concrete traps moisture in the walls, preservation specialists today remove concrete mortar and replace it with soil cement, a mixture that replicates the original mortar. Clues from life and death. We can learn a lot of information about the people who lived in the pueblo from what they left behind. The hillside contained a refuge site that yielded clues about the diet and daily life of the people of the village. We know they hunted large and small game with obsidian-tipped arrows and made plain red-brown pottery. They planted crops of corn, cotton, squash, and beans, and also cultivated agave and prickly pear for food and fibers. Their fields ran along the river's floodplain, the flat area that extends to the hills in the distance. Clues to their customs also came from the bodies of the buried here. We know people were sent thoughtfully to the afterlife equipped with food, shell, and stone jewelry and pottery, while others were buried with the tools of their trade. Burials suggest the differing social statuses and skills a person acquired over their lifetime. Clues in architecture. Although they shared similar lifestyles and cultures, the people living here held some traditions that differed from their Puebloan neighbors to the north. In one of the rooms, excavations discovered a partial wall underneath the floor. People had built a new room on top of an older one. Most rooms here had two large posts in the center of the room to support one or two roof beams, dividing the room in half or thirds. Random, unshaped rocks formed two outside walls filled with a thick dirt and rubble core, all held together with large amounts of mud mortar. These are distinctive construction methods. To the north, people used horizontal rock courses and constructed their roofs by running multiple beams from wall to wall without any support posts.